This is Good Morning Transfers. Conor Gallagher will travel to Madrid for a medical after Chelsea and Atletico finally agree a deal which will see him leave and Samu Amarodion move in the other direction. We'll have the latest on that deal and the transfer domino effect in a moment. We'll also be asking who is the best British player to have played abroad. Plus, Manchester United hold talks over a French international midfielder. And could we see a World Cup winner heading to the Premier League? In amongst all of that, we're of course building up to the start of the new EFL season as well. And if you're out and about, you can keep up to date with all the latest transfer news on our dedicated Transfer Centre blog. All you have to do is scan the QR code on your screen right now. Now, before we get to transfers, it's time to continue 72 Live, where we're visiting every single EFL club over the next 3 days. Today, it's League Two, and now let's head to Wales and to Newport, where we can join our reporter, David Craig. David, good morning.
Good morning, Olivia. We're literally getting on our bikes to bring you 72 Live this year. We're here in the gym at Newport County. I'm pedalling furiously. I'm not sure I'm getting too far. Might sum up my career, actually, that one. But really, on a serious note, I'm delighted to be joined by Scott Wickens, who's the head of performance here. Scott, on a serious note, how important are those pre-season preparations, particularly here in the gymnasium?
Well, yeah, it's good. So we know what League Two's like. It's Saturday, Tuesday from the get-go, really, especially with Cup competition, things like that. So it's important the lads are prepped, ready to go for Saturday.
Obviously, one of the things is to keep it interesting for everybody. How do you go about designing those programmes?
Well, it's about keeping the basics really, and getting them done properly, and then kind of adding in what we need to do around that and individualising the stuff for the lads.
How individual do those programmes get with certain players? Is it different for defenders, goalkeepers, strikers, midfield players?
They're all different, obviously different positions, but they see the game differently, they play the game differently, especially the way we're playing this year. They're different requirements, so it has to be individual as we can get it, especially with previous injuries and things like that. We need to make it as individual as we can get it, really.
Big part of sports science, of course, is the nutrition. You take it out, but you've got to put it in. I've seen the boys in the kitchen there. A lot of work going on with baked beans there, but there must be more to it than baked beans.
Well, that's what we were saying, really, like Saturday, Tuesday. It's you're either recovering from one or you're fueling for the next one. So it's all about maximising those opportunities for the lads to make sure they're ready to go.
We're obviously in the week that the new season starts. Everybody's excited. How have you tailored the programme ahead of that game away at Cheltenham?
This week becomes more like an in-season week, really. It's not as full-on as it's been previously, because obviously we're ready. We need to be ready to go. But the lads are still working hard. Still got 3 or 4 days to go yet. So yeah, there'll be a lot of work to get through before Saturday.
Now, we're doing our little bit on the exercise bikes here. I mean, we all do a bit on the bikes in the gym. What do bikes really do? We often see them now in the tunnels at games, players warming up on them. What do they bring to the game?
It's about ticking over, really, and it's about lads. They use it as a chance to focus. You'll probably see the lads in here later on, before pre-ab, getting ready to go, just ticking over, getting their legs moving before they start to ramp up before training, really. In the tunnel and things like that, it's the same sort of thing. It's just ticking over, ready to go, ready to warm up, ready to get on the pitch and go and perform.
Players are excited. How much are the backroom staff excited ahead of this huge season? You're going to see more games than ever on Sky. 20 times we'll see Newport or thereabouts. How exciting is it?
Yeah, it's been a big shift from everyone. We've got a really tight-knit staff here, and everyone's been building in over pre-season really well. So yeah, we're looking forward to it. Brilliant.
Now listen, I've got to ask you before we go, how's my style on the bike? Is it all right?
Yeah, it's not bad. You give me a good going over, but yeah, it's all right. It's not bad.
Well, listen, we'll leave Scott there to do his bit. I'm going to get off as gracefully as possible, because there's a man here who's been watching my performance, Nelson Jadim. Hi. Nelson, thank you so much. Hi, Mackenzie, the media manager, here as well. I've just got to ask you first, when I first came, you said he's the real boss, so should I be talking to you or him?
Yeah, well, again, I think we have got shared responsibilities on this, but obviously they have got a big role in our club.
Mackenzie, before we go into the boss, how would you fancy picking the team this weekend?
It's all Nelson. That's his job. That's what he gets paid to do. But no, it's an exciting season, and yeah, he's got a good job to do, but a hard job to do before Saturday.
Nelson, on a serious note, you know this part of the world, South Wales, very well. You spent a lot of time down at Swansea. How much are you looking forward to this challenge as a head coach in your own right, though?
Yeah, no, it's a big challenge, obviously. I know the country, I know the place. Really looking forward to this challenge, and obviously bringing a new style of this club, and something that I was lucky enough to live in Swansea.
I've been reading a lot in the local press and on your website here about the style. Just tell us how you want Newport to approach their football this season.
No, it's got to have it's a possession-based style of football. We have to be able to take control of the ball. We have to enjoy ourselves when we are playing, and that's the type of football I believe. I don't like to be chasing the ball for 90 minutes, so I'd rather have the ball in my hand.
Been reading some of your press comments as well. You said you'd like it to be a comfortable season for Newport.
It is.
What do you quantify as comfortable?
No, I think the main point for this season is to make sure we can see clearly there's a new style of football being implemented, and hopefully that style of football will give you that comfortable season. And the comfortable would be obviously being in a position where allow you to keep thinking and being focused on improving your style of football, and hopefully attract more players to this club as well.
Now, as I'm sure you're aware, it's our biggest season of EFL football ever on Sky. You kick off on Saturday. How has the heart rate gone up as we approach that game away at Cheltenham?
Yeah, we're still quite far. There's still three days to go. But yes, I think we're all looking forward for that game. Me, the staff, and the players. We know it's going to be a tough game up against a good club, a good manager that has done very well for us here. So and they've got a couple of players there that they were our players. So really looking forward to that game, and I'm sure there's going to be a good game.
And one final thing, as we said, it's the final week. The game is looming. Do things change preparation-wise as you home in on that first game?
Yeah, again, I think we are in a good position now. We've got a couple of weeks of work. The boys have been great. I have nothing but the best to say about these boys. They've been working hard, very committed with what they are doing, very interested in the way we are going to play. Yes, and again, I think we are in a good position now. And we've got still two more days to make sure we are ready in all aspects of the game.
Well, Nelson, thank you for welcoming us into your club. If things go wrong, you can always turn to Mackenzie over there. He's got all the answers. Olivia, I'm going to get some of those baked beans down me. We're off to Swindon Town next, but not sure how far I'm going to get on this. But heads down, pedal furiously, you never know.
Thank you very much, David. So the season is nearly here and you won't miss any of the action. Sky Sports Plus will show over 1,000 EFL matches this season. Every League One and League Two team will be featured live on Sky at least 20 times next season. And every one of the 24 Championship clubs will be live on Sky at least 24 times. Customers with a full Sky Sports subscription won't need to do a thing. All you have to do is scan the QR code for all the information. A very good morning to Sam Abasaki, Kwaku Afari and Nabeed Haroon. All right, let's get straight to transfers. And to this transfer domino, it involves Conor Gallagher, Samu Omarodion and Julián Álvarez. Let's begin with Gallagher and Omarodion. Deals worth £38 million have been agreed. They're not quite done yet. Omarodion can move now because Atleti have a replacement in Julián Álvarez from City. That's worth a huge £82 million. I mean, Sam, this deal took significant steps last night. And it looks like Conor Gallagher is flying to Spain to finalise this move. Yeah,
we're just waiting for the final confirmation of him actually flying over to complete his medical. But it's a deal that, Atletico Madrid have been in talks with Chelsea for a few weeks now. I think the final hurdle was convincing Conor Gallagher. Obviously, he's playing for his boyhood club. He's come through the academy at Chelsea, still only 24 years old, but I think Diego Simeone and the Atletico Madrid hierarchy were very fond of what he can bring to their side. They've seen, the midfielders that they have, and even though they're great for them, they are aging a little bit, and I think he definitely has the youth that they need.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting to see what Conor Gallagher can do over in Spain. We've seen this happen a fair bit, Nabeed, with British players going over abroad to play their football, and there's actually been some really big names as well.
Yeah, and to be fair, the history supports the fact that moving to Spain is actually a pretty good idea for a general number of English players. We've seen, as you just mentioned there, some absolute icons go over there. Gareth Bale, British players, should I say, Gareth Bale being one of them. I realised that when I saw there's a Welshman on there, and we're going to claim him. He had an outstanding legacy at Madrid, 3-time La Liga winner, 5-time Champions League winner. I think his sort of like legend status was tarnished a little bit by his relationship with the fans. And I'd say the rest of these guys have all had very good relationship with fans, very good relationships with clubs. But in my opinion, he's definitely one of the most underrated footballers that you'll ever see that went over there. Then obviously Gary Lineker throws it back a little bit. Iconic shirt, by the way. Some may have forgotten, but bagged 42 goals at Barcelona. He said previously about the different styles and how he adapted back then. Bale again spoke about the different styles. Then, of course, there's David Beckham, who was just on. I mean, if you look at that picture, I think it'll bring back so many memories of Zidane and Figo and R9. Probably in one of the most iconic Real Madrid teams ever. And I think we might be embarking on something very similar now with Jude Bellingham, with Mbappe there, Vinicius, Rodrigo. There's so many superstars on that Madrid side. And Jude, I mean, he's paired next to Beckham in this. And I really do feel like we're looking at a shadow of a David Beckham version, a superstar, a global superstar, someone that people look at and immediately go, that is the symbol of Real Madrid. And then there's Harry Kane sandwiched in the middle of all of that. He's at Bayern Munich in the Bundesliga, had an unbelievable first season. And another player that I think, if he plays another couple of years in Germany, could end up with a really big trophy cabinet like 4 of the 5 guys on here. So there is a track record to suggest moving to La Liga, although it doesn't happen as frequently as maybe it should do. There is a track record suggesting that, well, if you do move over there, you could potentially be successful. And I really hope Conor Gallagher is successful, because I think we all here go, he's a top footballer who's maybe a little bit misunderstood.
Yeah, he's a lovely... I mean, we will have worked with him quite a few times, and he keeps himself to himself. He's actually quite shy, but he's been a great servant for Chelsea over the years that he's been there, and he led the club very well last season because he obviously captained the club loads of times. Obviously Gallagher's going one way. Samu Omorodion Kweku is coming the other, coming to England, a young and inexperienced striker. Can you understand why Chelsea have gone for him?
It's baffling Chelsea's transfer strategy. We're going to delve into that a little bit deeper in terms of why Chelsea have targeted him. But last season had a decent year at Alaves. We talked about him being brought to Chelsea, and the fact that he is being brought to Chelsea is because Atletico found a replacement for him in Alvarez. But he's not played the game for Atletico yet. He's a striker that's big and he's strong, and he was at Granada, and that's where Atletico scouted him from and brought him in. And he's a player that scored 8 goals in 34 league games last season. A little bit less versatile position-wise in comparison to Chelsea's other strikers. If you look at Nicholas Jackson, who can play out wide, and Kunku can play in a multitude of positions. But he's a striker that's good with both feet, and he's a killer in the penalty area as well in terms of finishing. So he's a player that we're going to keep a close eye on him, but I'm not too sure if he's going to guarantee goals to Chelsea or be that guaranteed starter that Chelsea are looking for. For the longest time, Chelsea have been looking for the replacement for Diego Costa. He left in 2017. Chelsea are still searching for that striker. And so with Omorodion, it remains to be seen if he can really fill the void or break the curse of Chelsea number 9s. But he's a young and inexperienced striker, and at this moment in time, I think Chelsea need experience in the squad.
I mean, regarding Chelsea's transfer business, not even just this summer, but over the last couple of years, I suppose specifically this summer, have you seen anything like it?
Yeah, no, we've never seen anything like it. We were talking about it off air, whether a team has done something where they've signed a lot of youngsters that are promising, and obviously the average age of footballers now has decreased a lot. So a lot of teams are looking for younger players. We're seeing loads of teams linked with 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds that are primed to become really great players. But Chelsea have done it in, like we're talking, the striker situation. Mark Guiu came in this summer, and he's been playing pre-season. A lot of the Chelsea fans are raving about him and his qualities. But then Omorodion, is that gonna stifle how his position is being placed at Chelsea? I think that's what Chelsea fans are questioning and wondering how it's all going to work. Currently there's 41 first-team players in the side. So obviously there's going to be players that are going to go out on loan. Some are going to go out permanently. Chelsea, there's so many links. But at the same time, does that make the negotiations difficult because teams know that you need to sell and you need to loan out these players? So it's an interesting space.
That's a very, very good point in terms of put Chelsea in a tough negotiating position because teams or potential buyers know that Chelsea need to sell, which will drive down the prices for these players they need to offload. But you ask if you've seen anything like this before, and I'll just take my mind back to last season, where Chelsea, it's different in terms of the profile players that Chelsea targeted, but there was such an influx of players and such a large amount of players leaving. If you look at the players that left, Kai Havertz, Mason Mount, Kovacic, Koulibaly, Pulisic, Loftus-Cheek, Mendy, Callum Hudson-Odoi, and the players that came in, more established than the players that Chelsea bringing in this summer, but Caicedo, Lavia, and Nkunku, Cole Palmer, Disasi. I'm not going to go through every single one of them because
we'll be here all day.
We'll be here until 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
But Chelsea have done this before, and this is an interesting strategy, to say the least, from Clearlake Capital when it comes to recruitment. And Sam's mentioned it, 41 players? That's such a bloated squad, and it's not sustainable. The season starts in a week and a half. Chelsea play Man City on Monday Night Football, and we've got so many players to offload. It's going to be a difficult situation for Enzo Maresca. He's talked about the bloated squad. He's talked about how many players he's got with Chelsea and how he's going to contend with that. But it's just a difficult position to put a brand new manager in, and I think he's going to struggle in his first few games.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. I think it'll be tough for any manager, let alone Enzo Maresca, obviously only his second season as a manager. Nabeed, this whole transfer domino effect, the piece that makes it all work is Julián Álvarez to Atletico, £82 million. We haven't had your opinion on it, so what is your opinion? It's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money, but then when you think about how many number 9s there are in the world, Haaland, Kane, and then who else is actually a number 9 that's going to score goals wherever they're going? Julián Álvarez was number 2 to Haaland, and I think there was periods last season when Haaland was out where people were saying he could start for any other Premier League teams. So essentially what we're saying is, if you take out the fact that he's been number 2 to Haaland and just look at Julián Álvarez at Man City, you're saying this is a striker that could play for anyone in Europe.
Yeah.
And therefore £80 million for a striker that could play for anyone in Europe feels like a fair price. I know for a lot of people they're going to say, yeah, but that's 80 million, but Jack Grealish was 100 million, and he's a substitute winger now. So I think there's a lot of money being thrown around. I think he's 24 years of age. He'll be around for a little while. And he suits Atletico Madrid, and he can play. He's very versatile. He can play in multiple positions. I actually think it's a really good deal all round. City needed the money. Alvarez gets a big deal, and Atletico get the striker they want.
Yes, absolutely. That's one out then at City, we think. What about Manchester United then? Coming up, we'll have an update on Scott McTominay's future and Jadon Sancho. Monaco over the signing of midfielder Youssouf Fofana. United are looking at a number of options, including Richard Rios from Palmeiras, Burnley Sander Berger, Real Sociedad's Martin Zubimendi, and Fiorentina's Sofian Amrabat, who they, of course, already know well. Interest is retained in PSG's Manuel Ugarte, but not at the prices currently being quoted. Sam, I mean, is it fair to say that Man United at this stage are desperate for a midfielder? The season starts in a week and a half. Their season starts on Saturday against City in the Community Shield.
I wouldn't... It's a weird one, because I wouldn't say desperate, because they've got numbers in midfield. They've got 7 or 8 midfielders that could start that game in Kobbie Mainoo, McTominay, Eriksen, Mason Mount, Bruno, Hannibal, or Gore. But when you look beyond that, they've got one CDM in Casemiro, who's obviously 32 years old. He missed 17 matches due to injury. Kobbie obviously had a great breakout season. We saw what he done for United, saw what he done for England. But you almost don't want to overdo it, put too much pressure on him as well because of how young he is. They're going to be playing in Europe as well. Eriksen, 32, missed 28 games in the last 2 seasons. You don't really know where his strengths lies in terms of, is he an attacking midfielder? Can he sit next to Kobbie Mainoo? We don't really know. And then you talk about Mason Mount, who missed 27 games last season due to injury, and now he's having a great pre-season. But at the same time, he's almost like McTominay in terms of their strengths are better in the attacking third. You know, we see them doing well going forward. So they don't really have a midfielder that could complement Kobbie Mainoo on a week-to-week basis or take that pressure off of him. So I think that's where they would need to strengthen. They tried to do that with Amrabat when he came in. They wanted him to be that destroyer that we all saw. Didn't really work out. Didn't acclimatise to the league as well as they wanted him to. So I think that's where they would need. But at the same time, we spoke about it on this show a few times. They have to sell a player to bring someone in because of how bloated that position is.
I mean, I mentioned there are a few names, Nabeed, that they've been linked with. You've taken a closer look at one of those.
I mean, Yusuf Fofana's been linked to the Premier League for quite a while now. A lot of people wanted him to sign a couple of years ago, but I think the timing for him is very good. I think he's developed into the player everyone thought he was. A point that Sam makes, which I think is the nail on the head, a lot of people are saying United need a 6, but I think they actually need someone to shoulder the responsibility next to Kobbie Mainoo. Kobbie Mainoo is going to be a superstar, there's no doubt about that, but he's still a kid. You can't ask a kid to play as many minutes as he's been asked to play, and also there's going to come a point where they're going to just rely on him constantly. It kind of happened last season as well. So this man comes in, and a lot of people are saying he's a number 6. I would say he's a bit of everything. He's not your traditional 6. I don't think that position actually exists anymore. When you look at Rodri, he's so multifaceted. Same with Declan Rice. So you bring this man in who can do a bit of everything. So as you can see here, some of his stats are pretty good. A holding midfielder with 4 goals and 4 assists, not very common. And his passes is what I actually want to look at, because I think with Kobbie Mainoo, the demand for him is get him the ball. Can he play a load of passes during a game? He's not a high-volume passer. Yusuf Fofana could be that profile. He's a box-to-box profile. He's someone who wants the ball. His progressive passing is brilliant. Averaged 8 per game last season. Casemiro was at 5. So he's a long way ahead of probably his most likely person he's going to be competing with. And as I say, in a pair in midfield and a 4-2-3-1, an uncommon system these days. A lot of teams play 4-3-3, but it feels like a natural fit next to Kobbie Mainoo, because when you look at these options, Bruno Fernandes is obviously the number 10. He's the one you want to play, and I think he needs the freedom, by the way. That's the other side of it. I think with Casemiro playing in there, Bruno still has to drop in and do a shift for him. With all due respect to Casemiro, I think physically the decline has been pretty obvious to see. Yusuf Fofana is a 24-year-old midfielder who can get up and down. He wants to get about the pitch. The weakness to his side that maybe Casemiro brings that Fofana doesn't have is the dual winning, which I think is still a problem for Manchester United in midfield. But the midfield market is difficult, it's saturated, you have to pay a lot of money to bring a perfect midfielder in. He might be the best alternative. Sam mentioned Mount and Eriksen and McTominay. Are they going to play next to Kobbie Mainoo? That's kind of the problem here. When you look at this sort of options they have, you want to go to Yusuf Fofana because he's also a bargain option as well. And I think when you look at the other options, Sander Berge was mentioned, Rios was mentioned. The most applicable player, I think, here is Yusuf Fofana, because I think when you look at his skill set, it complements Kobbie Mainoo the best.
I completely agree. And you mentioned the number 6 position not really existing. I do think it exists, but I think there's only one player who's playing that position at world-class level, and that's Rodri. Put Rodri in Manchester United's midfield next to Kobbie Mainoo and Bruno Fernandes, that's the best midfield in the Premier League. You put Rodri in Liverpool's midfield, that's the best midfield in the league. There's a reason why every team Rodri plays for, they are the best team either in the league, in the Champions League, or we saw it in the summer at the Euros. And so the profile player that Manchester United need is a number 6, but there's not too many of them playing at an elite level. If you look at Manchester United and what they lacked last season, or what they've lacked for the last 4 or 5 years. Mourinho talked about it in 2018, no physicality. Ranić talked about it in 2022, no physicality. Talking about Man United in 2024, no physicality. They get bullied in games, and that's the issue for them. And they've landed on gold with Kobbie Mainoo. You can't waste that talent. And what they need in that midfield is a number 6 who's a destroyer, physical, but also can play football as well. Richard Rios, who we talked about, is a player that doesn't necessarily fit that because he's more of a dribbler. Obviously, Tim Vickery's joined us at 12 o'clock and he can explain him a bit more in terms of what he did at Copa America. He's a Colombia international, but he's not necessarily that destroyer and physical number 6. Zubimendi is a tempo setter, but not necessarily as physical. So United are running out of options, and you detail Yusuf Fofana right there, and I think he might be the best option because he has got that physicality, but he's more of a box-to-box midfielder. So it's a conundrum for Manchester United in a position that is very bloated, but also has a lot of need as well.
Yeah, well, one of the options they currently have, obviously, is Scott McTominay, and Fulham are not expected to return with an improved offer for him. They've already had 2 bids rejected. The latest was worth £20 million, and there is still a gap in valuation. So Fulham's focus is currently on other targets. Sam, do you think Fulham need Scott McTominay anyway?
No, I spoke about it yesterday. I think, obviously, he's a great player and he's a versatile player as well. He can play multiple positions. He's done it for United. He's done it for Scotland as well. But in terms of where he thrives, they've literally just signed Smith Rowe. They have Iwobi in that position who can play that position as well, Pereira. And I think where you have too many players that can play one position, you'll end up with a situation like United where you don't necessarily know who's the best there, or you're going to try to shoehorn someone in another position. Players become unhappy. And I think Fulham have had a good pre-season. You know, the camp seem happy. And I think if you added him to that, it would have just ruined the harmony a little bit. So it makes sense. But I also do think they do need to put that money to replacing Paulinho because he was so important for them for the last few seasons.
Yeah, he was brilliant, wasn't he, Paulinho? Right, we've got some breaking transfer news just reaching us, and that's that Brentford have agreed a deal with Napoli to sign midfielder Jens Kajuste. The deal is an initial season-long loan with a £10 million obligation to buy him next year. The 24-year-old Sweden international made 26 Serie A appearances last season. 15 of those, though, were off the bench. Right, staying in London then, because next up, we spoke about them earlier, Chelsea have a bloated squad. Will there be further outgoings at Stamford Bridge? Welcome back. Chelsea and Napoli are currently in talks over a deal for Romelu Lukaku. The deal under discussion is a permanent move. Chelsea have made it clear they're not interested in loaning Lukaku for a third season. Napoli see Lukaku as a replacement for Victor Osimhen, who is edging closer to a potential move to PSG, with talks continuing between the two clubs. I mean, Sam, one of those options is Lukaku in that Chelsea attack. But when you look at how many strikers are at the club right now, the numbers are just ridiculous.
Yeah, and I think the age, the profile, the experience that they have as well. You talk about Nicholas Jackson, he's second full season as a forward, because when he was playing at Villarreal, he was playing mainly on the left-hand side. Obviously, Lukaku's there, Broja, Fofana, Washington, Gui, who's just come in, and Nkunku, who can play in that position as well. And I think when you look at the age profile of these players, it just becomes interesting to think, what are they planning in terms of their progression? Where do they see them? What do they see them becoming? Do they see them at Chelsea? Is it a business model where you see them going out on loan? Because if Fofana does get sold for a similar price to Hutchinson, then are they validating in what they're doing? But at the same time, a lot of these players are coming to Chelsea. They're speaking about, wanting to play for one of the biggest clubs in the world, wanting to, get Chelsea back to winning ways, and then the next week, there's a player that's coming in the same position. So it's interesting to see so many players still being convinced, knowing that there's young players in that same position. So I'm not really sure why this is happening, but it's happening.
Yeah, it is happening. Right, we might get more on Chelsea's squad depth a little bit later, but now let's continue our 72 Live. And this time, we're off to the northwest and up to Carlisle, who are preparing for life in League Two. And our reporter, Keith Downey, is there for us. Keith! Keith, good morning. Have you just woken up?
Good morning. Yes, I have just woken up. And I've woken up, Olivia, in Carlisle, in my Carlisle United bed covers, which I'm sure you can see, a new season. And that is because, in fact, I'm going to get up. I've got my clothes on, though. I am at Carlisle United's new museum. We're going to start over my shoulder. Look at this. Own the North, the most northern club in the EFL this season, Carlisle United, hoping to get promoted out of League Two back to League One. I'm just going to show some of the art before we get round to speak to the manager, Paul Simpson. There's some pin badges donated courtesy of Michael Fowler. But look at this, Olivia. Look at these. Match reports. Carlisle United match reports. Thousands of them, dating back decades there. One person has donated all that. Not bad getting all that out of your attic in here. I'm just going to walk through here quickly. Some of the Carlisle United shirts over the years. Some of the top players. The one that stands out, Jared Branthwaite, of course. Huge name now, attracting interest from Manchester United and Real Madrid. Former Carlisle United players and managers. It's the current manager, Paul Simpson, who joins us live on Sky Sports News this morning. Paul, just quickly, before we talk about your season, you're glancing over your shoulder there at Brunton Park as it was back in, I think it was 2015, when the floods hit the city.
It's actually 2005. This was the first flood. So we were away in London, and I was laying in bed, woke up, flicked the TV on. there was a helicopter flying above, and I'm looking, thinking, that looks a little bit like our ground that I hadn't heard we'd flooded. And then I saw my car floating in the car park.
That's your car there, is it?
That's my car floating.
Your old car.
So I had a bit of a result because that got flooded, obviously. I had a Rover, and the Audi garage made a very kind gesture and let me use an Audi A8, so I was spoilt rotten because my Rover got flooded.
And of course you've been back as manager now for a second time, but then there was other floods back in 2015. Let's just have a quick look at what the stadium was like. That was a long time ago now, but there's a lot of work. I know we're not at the stadium today, we're here at this new museum, the Tully House, but just tell us a little bit about the work that's going on at the stadium right now to bring it up to standard.
Yeah, there's a hell of a lot of work. There's a whole rebuild going on in terms of the infrastructure, but also the playing squad. But in this east stand here, we've had 8 new executive boxes built. We've got a new director's box, new boardroom, 2 new hospitality lounges and classrooms and new offices. And the new owners are coming and investing. I think we're talking about 5 million on this alone, because we've got new turnstiles for the supporters for Warwick Road End, new disabled entrance, new toilets. The toilets in the Warwick Road End were literally a drain on the floor and a wall for the gents, so they've now got a proper toilet. We're spoiling the fans, and it's what the Pyatax want. They want to make it a better experience for everybody. Now, to make it a better experience, in my mind, we need to make the football right as well, and that's the challenge for us this season.
Yeah, and of course there has been a lot of change off the pitch, as you document there, but on the pitch as well. Of course, you were relegated from League One last season, but there's been a lot of change, a lot of new signings coming in. I guess the aim for you this season is to get straight back up at the first time of asking.
Yeah, that's the remit. That's what our aim is. We made 5 new signings in January that unfortunately didn't stem the flow, and we ended up relegated. We've made 8 so far this pre-season, 8 new signings. So there's a big change, but I'm really pleased with how they're looking in pre-season. We know this league's a tough league to get out of, but we are fully focused on trying to achieve that.
Any worries, any concerns that there might be a bit of a hangover from last season? Because I guess finishing bottom of League One might have hit the confidence for a few players.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously that concern, but I haven't seen that in pre-season. That's all I can judge on at the moment. It really starts at Gillingham away on Saturday. That's when the true test comes, and we know Gillingham will be up for it because they've made changes. They've got a new manager, made some good recruitment moves. So it's a real challenge, but I hope that there is no hangover. But who knows? We just got to wait and see when we get started.
Talking about challenges, a moment ago you ditched it now, but you had your crutch with you. I know you've got a new knee, is that right, over the summer? So you've been in the treatment table yourself. How's it feeling? Are you back in training with the lads?
Well, I'm back out on the grass, but I'm a bit of a spare part at the moment. I'm literally most of the time I've been sat on an ice box and just watching and shouting from a distance. I probably needed a loud hailer, but to be honest with you, the staff have done a fantastic job over the summer. They've got the players into a good state of fitness. The organisation's good. So my knee will get better, and it's a long-term recovery. It's not a short-term one, but I don't intend to have my crutch on Saturday anyway.
From getting a new knee, cars underwater a few years ago, it's all happening up here in Carlisle. Paul, thank you very much for your time this morning as Carlisle United gear up for their first game of the season away to Gillingham on Saturday. And as you know, every match in the EFL this weekend live either on TV or the Sky Sports app.
Thank you very much, Keith. Right, we'll have plenty more from Chelsea on the way. Plus, could World Cup winner Mats Hummels be on his way to the Premier League? Our journey to visit every EFL club live over the next 3 days continues. Now it's time for our 7th club in League 2 as we journey to Chesterfield, and we can join our very own reporter, Dan Khan. Dan, you've swapped the studio for Chesterfield.
Yeah, good morning, Olivia. I do miss the studio a little bit, but of course, I'd much rather be here at Chesterfield, and welcome to Chesterfield's training ground. Of course, they're on a massive high, back in League Two, having won the National League title by 12 points, and of course under Paul Cook, his second stint at the club, and it was actually 10 years ago where he led Chesterfield to the League Two title. Will he do that again? We'll wait and see. But I'm joined by a few very special guests, very important to the club. One is a huge fan in terms of Mick Edge. We're going to meet him in a second, but perhaps even more importantly, he's the father of someone who's incredibly important at this club, Zoe Edge. Zoe has cerebral palsy, but she's a former Paralympian, and that hasn't stopped her from doing some amazing, amazing things for this club. And I'm joined by Mick now. Mick, lovely to see you. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. First of all, just tell us a bit more about your connection to Chesterfield, but also Zoe's.
Well, I've started going to Chesterfield since being a child, and Zoe, she's been since I think she was 5, and it's birthed virtually our lives, Chesterfield Football Club, especially Zoe. That's what she lives for.
Absolutely, and tell us a bit more about Zoe. We can tell us a bit more about the challenge she's going to be taking on as well. We can see it behind you as well.
Yeah, well, Zoe, she's always wanted to do challenges, and she came up with this idea herself. We didn't know anything about it for probably a couple of months, and she'd been coming and training up here, and she'd come up with this idea that she wanted to roll from the full length of the pitch. And we thought it was a bit crazy at the time, but that's Zoe. That's what she wants to do, and it's very hard to explain, really. Zoe doing this is probably as hard as somebody doing the marathon the first time. It's very difficult for her. She can't walk, she can't sit up herself, but she's always challenging herself for different things.
Absolutely. And just tell me how she came up with this idea. And she is such a huge fan of this club. They're telling me, she still does programme notes as well in terms of a column. It's amazing her impact on this club.
Yeah. She just came up with, I don't really know what came into her head to come up with this idea, really. But like I say, she's always doing something for the club. She just loves the club. She wakes up in the morning, she's on about the club, the players, and I've got to say all the management staff and the players are great with her. They're really good.
Absolutely. And looking ahead to the season, Mick, we were just talking just before we came on air, back out the National League, such a hard league to get out of. Yeah. How much are you looking forward to being back in League Two, and what do you think is possible for this season?
Oh, it's great to be back. We've had 6 years in National League, and I think that's long enough. And it's great to be back in EFL. I think this season, I think we've got a decent squad. You can never say what's going to happen, but I think we'll have a good season. I think personally, I think we'll be challenging for playoffs. As long as things just go right. But it's just to be back in EFL is great. Even if we're not challenging for playoffs, I think it'd just to be back, it'll be fantastic.
Absolutely, Mick Edge, thank you so much for joining us this morning on Sky Sports News. EFL on Sky more than ever. This is our first stop, of course. We're going to get on our way to Notts County, Olivia, but back to you in the studio for now.
Thank you very much, Dan. We'll see you at Notts County a little bit later. Right, we were discussing Chelsea earlier. Enzo Maresca has inherited a huge squad with around 30 players. The Chelsea head coach believes the situation is manageable, though, as they continue to work on incomings and outgoings this summer.
We try to do our best. Here we work, including the keeper, around 30 players. But I think we work quite well in terms of manage the situation. And we're going to try to do the same when we are there.
Ideally, would you like a smaller squad?
At this moment, the number is the player we are here is okay. We're gonna find there Cole and Mark, both they are there. So it's just 2 more players. The rest, I think, they are doing something apart.
So Chelsea's squad has been, we've talked about it in depth. It's been so exploded over the last couple of seasons. And so we're going to take a look at it in depth. You mentioned 41 players in total. This is a Chelsea team that needs to offload players. If you look at it right here, goalkeepers. There's only really 3 keepers here who are going to be in contention to start for Chelsea next season. You look at Robert Sanchez, you look at Philip Jorgensen, who Chelsea recently signed for Villarreal, and you look at Petrovic, who was Chelsea's #1 for the majority of last season. You see Kepa Arrizabalaga, who signed for Chelsea a good 4 or 5 years ago, is still at the club. So this is a position that Chelsea needs to offload players quickly. Whether there's going to be buyers or suitors for those players remains to be seen.
Yeah, it's interesting because if you look to the back end of last season, you would have thought Petrovic was going to be the key player to start this season. But obviously, with the way Enzo likes to play his football, he obviously likes to play that keeper that can play out from the back. So that's changed. And I think you see the same with the defence. You know, there's so many players here, players that came in last season, and Axel Disasi. Obviously, Cucurella was one of those players that came when the ownership originally changed. He's had a great Euro, so he's probably looking to start. But there's so many players coming back from injury. Fofana, you know, Malo Gusto, who came last season, had a great year, so he's hoping to kick on from there. Reece James coming back from injury, wanting to kick on, obviously captain. We've got a few players that haven't really featured this much during pre-season.
He's one to keep an eye on, right?
Ben Chilwell. So it's going to be interesting to see how he weathers players' expectations.
Definitely. Look at these Chelsea midfielders, and we've talked about them ad nauseum. Chelsea have got so many players in that middle of the park position. Obviously, I've offloaded or about to offload Conor Gallagher. But there's players who are unproven. Romeo Lavia is a player that was great at Southampton, didn't play at all last season for Chelsea. In pre-season, he's impressed. Hopefully this year he can really kick on because he's a player that brings a lot to any team that he plays for. Omari Kellerman's an interesting one. Signed for quite a lot of money from Aston Villa. Will he get significant minutes at Chelsea this season? We don't know. Enzo Fernandez, we've talked about him a lot in terms of what's going on off the field with him. He needs to kick on because Chelsea paid a lot of money for him. But in this position, Chelsea have got so many players. But you mentioned it earlier, Sam. When you've got this many players and clubs know you need to sell, it makes it more difficult in the market. So, again, Chelsea need to get rid of a lot of midfielders there.
Yeah, and definitely. Even when you look at the ages of those players, I think the average age is around 22, 23, so it's going to be hard to manage those expectations. But then you look at the forwards as well. We talk about Raheem Sterling. He's probably the most experienced player in this lineup. Cole Palmer, probably the most important. He hasn't featured yet in pre-season because of what he done at Euros. But so many of these youngsters are going to be wanting to stake a claim for Chelsea and try to be important. But there's so many players and so many expectations and so many profiles that can work, and so many unproven players as well. So I've got a question for Nubay. Do you think that this system or the way they're signing players is sustainable?
I don't think you can sustain continuously signing players that you've got no plans with in the long term. Apart from Cole Palmer, all those players you were going through, I was looking at it thinking, I don't think any of these signings have really worked, bar maybe Palmer and obviously Caicedo a little bit last season. Then the forwards list, there's Angelo Gabriel there, and I was like, I don't even think I've seen his name on the bench.
He was mouthing to me, who is Angelo?
I was like,
but I reckon if you ask a lot of Chelsea fans that, but half of them probably wouldn't know who Angelo.
That's the issue as well of Chelsea, because if you ask 100 Chelsea fans, what's your Chelsea starting 11 for next season, you'll get 100 different answers, which is a problem, because Enzo Maresca's manager's got a specific philosophy, a specific style of play, and Chelsea need to understand, or he needs to understand what he's going to have at his disposal next season, because we know he's not in control of the incomings and outgoings, but Chelsea, the season starts in a week and a half, and we still don't know who's going to be part of this Chelsea squad. Very worrying times.
It is very worrying times, and it almost makes you feel really sorry for Enzo Maresca, because what can he do? It's a tough job in itself, let alone coming into a club that has that many players on the screen, as we just saw, with only a week and a half to go until the season starts, and Chelsea are desperate, I would say, to get players out of the club. Right, to Brighton now. They've made contact with free agent Matt Hummels. Nabade, you're cheering. I mean, I like this, because this is almost how excited Dan Kahn got yesterday at the thought of Matt Hummels coming to the Premier League. Do you like that potential move?
I mean, I can't match that level of excitement, but Matt Hummels coming to the Premier League is a great move. Sam's not that much of a fan because he's
Don't say that. That's not true.
Thrown under the bus there. Thrown under the bus.
Legend of the game.
Nah, he's a great player, but he's 35 years old, playing next to probably Dunk, 32 years old. I'm just thinking of the pace, but they're great centre-backs.
You were buzzing about Thiago Silva. Matt Hummels.
That's true.
Fine.
Can you compare Thiago Silva and Matt Hummels?
You absolutely can. You absolutely can. Matt Hummels.
Can you?
Are we doing that?
We've had enough Chelsea chat, I think.
Yeah. Thank you for watching Chelsea TV. It's been great this morning. We've thoroughly enjoyed it. We have been talking all about Chelsea and their squad depth. But could Matt Hummels be on the way to the Premier League? Right, Good Morning Transfers is back at the same time tomorrow morning. You can catch that at 9 a.m. We've got plenty more to come today from the team. Transfer Talk is here at midday. And Tim Vickery joins us as well. And for a full roundup of all of the day's news, you can catch the Transfer Show tonight at 5 and 7 p.m. Sam, Kwaku, Nabeid, thank you very much. We're, of course, just 2 days away from the start of the new EFL season. We're visiting all 72 teams before the big kick-off live to Bradford in the next hour.